One of the things that I've tried to do is to keep my imagination young.
And keeping that spark alive decade after decade. That may be the secret.
Did you know that Stephen King has been publishing books for 50 years now? In my book, it's time for a retrospective. Stick around. Hey everyone, Dr. Mike Lowley here. Welcome back to the lounge. Today we're going to have a retrospective about Stephen King. Specifically, I'm going to look at two of his earliest works, Carrie and The Shining. Stephen King is 77 years old, okay, and he is one of our most prominent and prolific writers. He spent most of his time in the horror genre, but he spent some time dabbling in fantasy as well as suspense. I was reintroduced to him last summer when I read On Writing, a memoir of the craft, and that was published in the year 2000. Clearly the man knows what he's doing, and it triggered my interest in reading his works again. I read them in the 80s, a couple of them, and I wasn't terribly bowled over. Having looked back at Carrie and The Stand now, though, I'm extremely impressed. I can understand why he gets all the kudos that he does. So let's start with Carrie.
Nellie Ruth Pillsbury King died at age 60 of cancer, but lived to see his first book, Carrie.
The hardcover advance was small, but the paperback advance just bowled us over. It was like $400,000 in 1974. It was a huge amount of money. And my brother and I talked a little bit about it. And we went to the Pineland facility where she worked. She was in her green uniform, green rayon uniform. Never told this story before. But she was stoned, totally stoned on over-the-counter medication. She was in excruciating pain by that point. And my brother and I, we said, "Mom, you're done. There's enough to take care of you now."
It was King's first novel, and it's been published in various editions with differing page counts. The one I got was the first edition from 1974 with 199 pages. Later editions have 320 pages, so it means he added additional material. Famously, King thought the book was unworthy, so he threw it out, and his wife Tabitha fished it out from the garbage, told him, "Come on, Stephen, keep going." He did. It was published, and the rest is history. So, Carrie's about child abuse and bullying, two topics that are really prominent today. Carrie White's mother is a religious zealot, and it leads her to abuse Carrie all her life. And then Carrie is bullied in high school, and it leads to a tragic end because she's invited to the prom. Her classmates pull a terrible prank on her, and unfortunately for them, she has telekinetic powers. So what she does is she wreaks havoc on them. She basically goes on a rampage that leaves the town of Chamberlain in ruins. All right, so that's Carrie. Let's talk about The Stand. The government develops a virus that's accidentally released to the population and decimates it. It's called the superflu or Captain Trips. And what ends up happening is a subset of the population miraculously survives, and basically two poles of people are established, good and evil. The good represented by Mother Abigail, an 108-year-old Christian who believes that she's there to really deliver the good people in God's image. The other pole is represented by Randall Flagg, who's the embodiment of evil on the planet Earth. He's basically the devil in human form. Now, interestingly enough, Mother Abigail and her people end up in Boulder, Colorado, where perhaps fittingly Randall Flagg and his people, who represent the malevolent side of things, they're holed up in Sin City, Las Vegas, Nevada. So this sets up an epic struggle between good and evil. Okay, so the original edition of The Stand was 823 pages, and people have criticized the ending because it seems truncated. King has said, well, he had to remove characters and scenes that, perhaps didn't add to the overall picture because the publisher wanted a shorter book. And at 823 pages, that's still pretty long.
Yeah, I've had an idea for the ending of The Stand for a long time. I was never really totally happy with the way it ended.
Wow.
Because the main characters, Stu and Fran, never talked about what happened to them after they left Boulder, Colorado, where the thing ends. And I always wondered about their trip back. And I had an idea. Josh came to me and said, would you be interested in writing, a button episode for this thing?
I was glad I read the complete and uncut edition, which was published in 1990. It's like a director's cut, and it's 1,152 pages long. But I have to tell you guys, that is a big book. I read this after the COVID-19 pandemic, and it really hit home. Back in the 70s, I doubt that this would have been thought of as anything but far-fetched. Now, well, it hit pretty close to home. Just looking at these two books, Carrie and The Stand, he was ahead of his time. At the end of this retrospective, reading these two books, the guy is a genius in front of the keyboard. And you can't go wrong with either of these books, even though I preferred Carrie.
I'm very fortunate to be able to do what I do. I love to tell stories, and in a way, I get paid for something that, in the words of the late John D. MacDonald, I would do for free.
So if you like what you saw today and heard, please subscribe. And remember, life's better in the lounge, and we'll see you next time.